This is 3-4 Part 1 in Advanced Geometry, and today we'll be writing equations of lines. We've got some familiar stuff to you and stuff that you probably haven't seen before. Old school familiar slope-intercept form, you should be very familiar with that, the old y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope, of course, and b is the y-intercept, but we're going to more commonly call that y-intercept 0b. It's an ordered pair, and whenever you have a y-intercept, that means the x value of that ordered pair is 0, right? We're figuring out what is the y value when x is 0. And then we'll deal with point-slope form here a little bit later. But remember, slope-intercept form, real common, y equals mx plus b. The idea is to get y all by itself on one side of the equal sign. So here on these first few problems, they say write an equation in slope-intercept form, and they straight up give you the slope, and they give you the y-intercept. So y equals m x plus b. Yeah, excuse me, y equals 2/3 x minus 10. So to graph that, the y-intercept is negative 10, and as you can see, we've always said y-intercept is negative 10, but that's really the ordered pair 0, negative 10, because x is 0, y is negative 10, and the Common Core is big on naming your y-intercept like so, so that's how I want to start doing it. And then we'll rise 2, run 3. Remember, we like to put 4 points, so we'll rise 2 and run 3 4 different times. And then we'll take our straight edge and we will connect those dots together. Make sure we go through the grid. And that's just a nice trip down memory lane of how to graph a line when it's in slope-intercept form. So let's do that again. Here, the slope, and then they give you this point right here, but that is the y-intercept because the x value of that point is 0. So you have y equals negative 7/9 x plus 5. The y-intercept is the y value of that point. So we start at 5 on the y-axis because that's why it's called the y-intercept. That's the ordered pair 0, 5. And then we'll go down 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because that was a negative 7, and to the right 9. And like I said, I always want to try to get 4 points on the graph if possible, but this slope is preventing me from putting any more. I can't go down 7 to the right 9. I can't even go up 7 to the left 9, so all I can get is 2 points. So we'll take our straight edge and we will connect those dots together. Next guy, y equals mx plus b is the form we want, slope-intercept form. Slope's 1, so I really don't need to put that in front of the x. We're trying to get a little more mathematically mature with how we write things, and the y-intercept was 0, negative 3. So that means plot that point, 0, negative 3, and rise 1, run 1. 4 separate points. So that was a beautiful trip down memory lane. Then they want us to write an equation in point-slope form with this info, then convert to slope-intercept form. And they gave me a point and they gave me a slope. Obviously, when they give you a point and they give you a slope, you should use point-slope form. But let me tell you how you probably had done this last year. You did this last year. You said, hey, here's how we did it. I want my answer in slope-intercept form, so I'll start with y equals mx plus b. Please don't write any of this down. I'm just showing you something. And you said, hey, if I've got an x value and a y value right here, I can sub all that stuff in. Y is 7, m is 3, x is 2, and I don't know b, so then we could clean this up a little bit, and then subtract 6 from both sides and figure out that b is 1. The problem is many students would forget that they're not done at this step. They want the equation in slope-intercept form, so you'd have to go all the way back and substitute back in. The slope is 3 and the y-intercept is 1, so there's your final answer. It's not like that's difficult or anything, but it takes that extra step of remembering, oh yeah, go back and substitute in. Let me show you how cool point-slope form works. Point-slope form, much cooler, my opinion. When they give you a point, they give you a slope, we want to use point-slope form. So that'd be y minus that y1 equals the slope times the quantity of x minus that x1 right there. And now we got to convert it to slope-intercept form by distributing through. So y minus 7 equals 3x minus 6. And now finally add 7 to both sides, and y equals 3x plus 1. We got the right answer that we wanted. That's the same thing I got over here, but the cool thing was I didn't have to do any extra, like, oh, here's the y-intercept, now go back and substitute in. I just got straight to my answer. So that's why we want to use point-slope form. And the Common Core is big on that. So let's do that again here. Let's use point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times the quantity of x minus x1. Now I'll point something out to you. I know fractions aren't that fun to deal with, so since we're learning point-slope form here, I thought let's have some easy ones. Do you notice that the denominator of our slope is like this number is a multiple of that? That's going to mean that things are going to come out pretty. Things are going to be nice and whole numbery. Gosh, sorry. Go away. Nice and whole numbery. So let's do this. Let's bring our stuff down. Negative 2/3 times x is definitely negative 2/3 x. And then the next thing, a nice little secret, is when you want to distribute right here, we're not going to use a calculator. Figure out what sign this should be first. You have a negative 2/3 times a negative 6. That's got to come out positive, right? Figure out what sign you have. And then since this denominator and that number are multiples of each other, you ask yourself this question. How many times does 3 go into 6 evenly? Twice. Take that result times your numerator, and you'll get a 4. Right? So one more time, that was 3 went into 6 twice. Take that times the numerator, and you get 4. And don't worry about sign because we have already figured that out. Right? Once you figure out the sign first, you can just think of these numbers as positive all the time. So 3 went into 6 twice. Take that result times your numerator, and you got 4. Now we got to finish putting this in slope-intercept form. So y equals negative 2/3 x minus 5. This guy, y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. And again, note this guy and this guy are multiples. 8 is a multiple of 4, so that's going to turn out nice. Y minus 16 will come down. 7/4 times x is 7/4 x. Then figure out the sign next. 7/4 times negative 8 will be a negative number. Now think of them as all positives. 4 goes into 8 twice. Take that times your numerator and get 14. Now add 16 to both sides. Plus 2. Sweet. Then the only difference with this is here's what we need to write an equation. We need a point, we need a slope. What do they give me here? 2 points. Too much, right? I need a slope though. So what we want to do is these points are both on the line. It says first find the slope. So let's get in the habit of putting m equals, and then we'll do our slope formula. y2 minus y1 turns into a plus right there. 5 minus 2 up there. And then we get 12 over 3, which reduces to 4 over 1. And since we're not graphing, right, they don't need us to graph anything. I was a big stickler on leaving the slope as a fraction last time. That's 4 over 1. Since we're just going with the equation, just leave it a whole number, right? If you're going to graph, you need 4 over 1. But if you're going to write an equation, 4 is fine. Now, we have our slope. All we need is a point. Well, we have 2 points provided for us. So pick one. It doesn't matter which one. Most people pick this one because it's all positive numbers. So let's do that, and let's use point-slope form. And get her set up like so. And then distribute and add 8 to both sides. I'll teach you another arithmetic trick. It's been a long time. You're so used to using a calculator. But hey, see these two numbers we're trying to add together? They have different signs. This is negative, that's positive. Different signs means subtract them from each other. What's 20 minus 8? 12. My pen froze, sorry. 12. But then you need to figure out what sign it's supposed to be. It's whatever whatever number was larger. 20 is larger than 8. Its sign was negative, so that's going to be a negative 12. So different signs, subtract and attach the larger sign. Here's what I like you to do. Do number 18. You need a slope first, then do point-slope form. So why don't you pause the video and get that done for me. Hopefully you got a slope of negative 1/4. And then when you distribute through, remember that's going to come out negative. So 4 goes into 4 one time. Take that times the numerator and you get 1. And that there was our answer. So on to the next page. Here they give you like secret ordered pairs here. They say here's an x-intercept, here's a y-intercept. Well, x-intercepts mean this. It goes through the ordered pair of whatever the x value is here. They say the x-intercept is negative 6, but the y value is 0, right? They're really telling you the ordered pair right here, negative 6, 0. So x-intercepts, y is always 0. And then in y-intercepts, x is always 0. So they truly did give you two ordered pairs here. And now we do the same thing we were just doing. We need to find the slope. Don't think just because there's a bunch of zeros involved that you can do all this in your head. You'd make a lot more mistakes than you think you do with sign error. So go through all the work and get a slope of 1/3. And now watch this. We need to, it says use point slope form first, then write the answer in slope intercept form. Okay. So y, I'm going to pick this point, right? You just pick whichever one you want. Y minus 2 equals the slope times the quantity of x minus x1, which was 0. So you can get y minus 2 equals 1/3 x, and 1/3 times 0 is 0. Then you add 2 to both sides. Remember, those aren't like terms over there, so you just get 1/3 x plus 2. And here's what I'm telling you. That was a big waste of time. All of this right here was a big waste of time because they wanted the final answer in slope-intercept form. Look what happened. What did the y-intercept turn out to be? 2. They told us what the y-intercept was. If you have a slope and you have a y-intercept and they want the answer in slope-intercept form, just go straight to that answer, right? We can outsmart the instructions. There's no need to go through all that work just to get this answer when we know a slope and we know the y-intercept. So let's try that again. Here the x-intercept is 2. Write that as an ordered pair. That means y is going to be 0. It's the old opposite game again. And the y-intercept is negative 5, so that's the ordered pair 0, negative 5. First thing we need, a slope. So m will equal this over this, which is a negative 5 over a negative 2. And guys, you can't leave a fraction like that. You can't have a negative over a negative. That's a positive, so make sure we're simplifying. You know that negative over negative is positive, so simplify that. Now I got a slope. They want the final answer in slope-intercept form. Boom! I know the y-intercept is right here at 0, negative 5. So why don't we go straight to y equals 5/2 x minus 5 and just say, I gotcha. Then they switch it up. They say, hey, I want you to write the equation of line that goes through this point right here and is parallel to this line. Well, I need a slope and I need a point. I definitely have a point that my line's supposed to go through, but I need the slope of that line. Well, here's a line provided. I know the slope of it, since this is in slope-intercept form, is 2/3. And since my blue line here is supposed to be parallel to that one, since parallel lines have the same slope, if this guy's slope is 2/3, my slope should be 2/3. So that's step one. You tell me that you know that the slope should be 2/3. Parallel means same slope. So now, I can't just go straight to slope-intercept form because this guy right here is not the y-intercept. How do I know it's not the y-intercept? The x value is not 0. So y minus a minus 4. I need to use point slope form. I have a point, I have a slope. I will put that equation in point slope form and then convert it to slope intercept form. 2/3 x. Now let's distribute. It's going to come out negative. How many times does 3 go into 6? Twice. Take that times your numerator and you get a 4. Then minus 4 y equals 2/3 x minus 8. Boom. And then I want to go through this point right here, and I want to be perpendicular to this line, so make sure we're reading for p words. This line slope is 1/2, but I want to be perpendicular to that, meaning I want the opposite reciprocal for a slope, so that's negative 2 over 1, or just plain old negative 2. Then we want to write the equation, so I will let you do that. Why don't you pause the video and write the equation of that line that has a slope of -2 and goes through that point right there. And when you're all said and done, I hope you got this. See, I didn't really waste my time and do point slope form because I'm slowing down and thinking, and I look at this point and go, hey, that's the y-intercept. How did I know 5 was a y-intercept? The ordered pair they gave me, its x value was 0. So math shortcuts, right? If the more we can recognize stuff, the better our life will be because we don't need to do a bunch of work when they tell me the y-intercept and I know the slope. So let's go again. Perpendicular to this line, so if this line slope is 1, I need the opposite reciprocal of that, which is -1. And then this is not the y-intercept. Why not? Because that x value is not 0. So gotta do the whole mamma jamma. Slope. Distribute. Add 5. And then the last one of these here is it's got to be parallel to this line and go through this point. This is not in point slope form, nor is it in slope intercept form. So unless you're very familiar with standard form and how to see the slope of that line, we got to put this in slope intercept form. So we want to get this all by itself. We'll subtract 2x first. That goes away. 3y comes down, equals comes down. We have minus 2x plus 6. Y is not all by itself. You got to get rid of that times 3 by dividing every term by 3. And y equals -2/3 x plus 2. So you know the slope of this line is -2/3. P word, parallel. The slope of our line should be -2/3 also. Got to go through this point. It is not a y-intercept because the x value is not 0, so y minus 7 equals -2/3 times the quantity of x plus 3. And distribute. Whoops, getting a little sloppy. And then 3 goes into 3 one time. Take that times numerator and you get a 2. And the sign was supposed to be negative. Add 7. And there we go. And the last one, are these lines parallel, or last page, say, are these lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Explain. I'll let you do all 4 problems on your own. Why don't you pause the video and check them out, right? Are the lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? And make sure you explain. Hopefully you answered them like this. On 28, those are parallel because they had the same slope. On 29, those were perpendicular because their slopes are opposite reciprocals. On 30, that was a neither. This slope is 4, that slope's -4. Those are not the same nor are they opposite reciprocals, so that's a neither. And then 31 is the big optical illusion. That slope is -1, which is also -1/1. This slope is 1/1. Those numbers are opposite reciprocals, so that's why those were perpendicular. And then on this last one here, we still like slope-intercept form, right? We want to write an equation for this situation in slope-intercept form because it's a story problem, and here's why. In a story problem, your slope and your y-intercept mean something. I mean, they always mean something, but like in the story problem, here's what ends up happening. The y-intercept is what we usually call the initial starting value, because that's the point 0b. It's like if there was some unit of time on there, you say at 0 units of time, you had b amount of whatever was on your y-axis right there. So that's your initial starting value. Your slope is the constant rate of change. Wow, rate of change. What a fancy phrase right there. So when we read this puppy and see which number is which, it says a local community theater offers self-defense classes for teens, $25 enrollment fee, covers supplies and materials, and open classes cost $10 each. Write an equation to represent this situation. So which one is the initial starting value and which one is the slope, the constant rate of change? Well, 10, since it's $10 per class, would be our slope, and $25 was your startup fee right there. But see, this answer, not good enough, Because in a story problem, you got to tell me what X and Y stand for. So please go off to the side and tell me that X stands for self-defense classes, and Y stood for the total cost. You need to explain your equation to the reader, and if the reader only saw this, they'd be like, okay, which one's X, which one's Y? You've got to tell them that. So story problems, make sure you're defining your variables.